So welcome everybody. My name is Amelia LaDolce. I'm the Executive Director of Vines. And before I tell you about Vines, I want to first thank our panelists and our organizers for the event. Thank you for making this happen. It's such an important topic. And I think we have a lot of folks who are excited to learn more, not only just about the concept of seed saving in general and food sovereignty, but we're going to have further workshops on how to actually save seeds. And I know we've got some folks who are really excited to be trying that at home. So we will have more opportunities for you to learn about that. I'll tell you all a little bit about Vines. So for those who are not familiar with our organization, we are a nonprofit based here in Binghamton. We got started just about 14 years ago at this point. It all started with just a few folks getting together, taking an empty lot on Columbus Park East, a little dead-end street in downtown Binghamton, and turning it into a community garden. And over the years, we've just grown and grown as different opportunities present themselves, as more people get excited about this effort and lend their time and their talents to our work. And at this point, we have 19 community gardens in the Binghamton area, Binghamton, JC, Endicott, Endwell, et cetera, the greater Binghamton area. We have a 2¼ acre urban farm in downtown Binghamton, where we both hire youth to work for us for the summer and learn all about food production, gain job skills, but also they then are growing food that serves our community. So our urban farm, along with 2 other local farms in the area, we provide about 250 boxes of produce every week during the growing season to folks in our community. And we provide those boxes of produce on a sliding scale based on people's ability to pay. So we can give folks up to 75% off of them, so that getting access to local food does not have to be an economic hardship. We also do a lot of education. This is the beginning of our workshop series for the year. And even with COVID, we have kept our workshops going, switched virtual, and we've got our slate of workshops on our website through May. So take a look, sign up, and we will have a lot more workshops to offer throughout the year. That's just a little bit about us. This workshop came together because of the brains of our friends at the Binghamton University Library, who got a grant to do some work on sustainability efforts in connecting the university and the library science department to promote topics, discussions around climate change. I'll let them talk more about that, but I just want to thank you both so much, Jen and Nada, for making all of this happen. And with that, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you so much. So thanks to you too, Amelia. We're so happy you can be here and have put this event on together. So to start, I'm Jennifer Embry. I am a librarian here at Binghamton University, and we will have 2 other moderators, 3 total today for this event. So Nada Gilman is the other librarian from Binghamton University that has helped put this event together, and also Christina Z, who's the Community Garden Program Manager for Vines. So this workshop, as you've heard already, is a really great collaboration between us at the libraries at Binghamton University and Vines. And this came about because of a grant that we received from the American Library Association called Resilient Communities, Libraries Respond to Climate Change, which essentially helps to fund public programming that helps discuss issues related to climate change and sustainability. And so we'd also like to highlight in this event that due to this grant, we've also decided to start a seed library at Binghamton University that's going to be kind of a community library for anyone in the community locally, as well as at Binghamton, to share seeds. So we want this library to open on Earth Day of this year, which is April 22nd. So we are sending out a call to anybody in the community that's willing to donate seeds to get this library up and running. And once it's open, anyone can come to take seeds and bring seeds at any point. So if you are interested in donating seeds, we can share a link to a form that you can fill out online that lets us know what you're interested in donating, and we can reach out and connect with you so that we can start the donation process. So now I'm going to kind of transition to talking about this workshop here. So the general structure, we're going to start by introducing the 4 amazing panelists that we have today. Each of them will have 10 minutes to talk about their own work and experiences with seed saving. And then after we have their presentations, we'll move on to the question portion of the event, where we will be asking some predetermined questions that Christina is going to be moderating. And after that, we will be taking questions from the audience. So if you think of any questions, please feel free to share them in chat. And without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce our first panelist, who is Junior Beauvais. So Junior is originally from Fondua, which is a small community village in the western part of Haiti. And he grew up on a small farm with his grandmother, where she would cultivate crops such as black beans, corn, and pigeon seeds, which were essential crops to farmers in Fondua. And Junior believes in seed saving because seeds are the economic engine for the farmers in our communities. However, getting proper seeds was a big challenge for the farmers in Fondua. So to help solve the problem, Junior built a seed bank to collect and distribute heirloom seeds to the farmers during planting seasons. And he's volunteered his time and efforts to help support the farmers to fight in Fondua to fight the seed crisis. So go ahead, Junior, you're up.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to the team. Thank you so much to Professor Christina Z for inviting me to this event. As Jennifer mentioned, my name is Junior Beauvais, and I'm from Fondua, a small community village. I know we have a little short time, but I'm going to go briefly to our presentation just to give you a glance of what we've been doing in Fondua. All right, I'm going to share my screen with you all, and I think, all right, we should be good to go. Haitian Heirloom Seed Bank. I hope everybody of you see this slide, right? Can you see it?
Yes.
Yeah, we're good. All right. Okay. As the title mentioned, is Haitian Heirloom Seed Bank. So my name is Junior Beauvais, and this is a little bit about me. I'm born and raised in Haiti, especially in Fondua. I went to Lycée Louis-Joseph Janvier, which is in the city, 2004 to 2009. Then happened the earthquake. After 1 year, I went to the University of Fondua, which is in our community. And then from 2011 to 2013, I get transferred to Virginia Tech, where I met Professor Christina also, and she taught me English. And then after that, I get my bachelor's done 2013, 2016, because it was a transfer. I get some credit goes toward my credit over here. And then I get my master's in agricultural leadership, so which was really fun, which is good. This is Fondua. You can see the area. You can see a little view of Fondua. It's very mountainous. It's a small community village, about 10,000 inhabitants. So that's where I grew up. And then, as we mentioned before, agriculture is very crucial to people in Fondua. It is actually the engine of Haitian economy. So without agriculture, people won't be able to survive. The main crop we plant in Fondua is our black beans, corn, and pigeon peas. These are the main crops. And after that, we have other crops that we plant sometimes. People plant sweet potatoes, cassava, yam, and tomato. I don't know if you're familiar with those, but these are like considered as secondary crops that people plant in Fondua. Then, not only we plant crops, but we also do have agricultural challenges in Fondua. Some of those challenges are like improper seed, like foreign seed or non-native variety. We have erosion problems, and we have drought. We have hurricane. We may have like 12 to 18 hurricanes in a year. And then also we have lack of government support. So because the government don't really help the farmers, they left on their own.
Hey, Junior,
Well,
can I ask a quick question?
yes, please.
Two things. Can you speak a little bit more slowly for the audience?
Yes.
And can you also, is there a way to share your entire screen? You know, like, can you do in presentation mode? Because
in presentation mode.
Very small.
Yes, let me try to see.
Thank
Can you see it now?
Somebody's watching on their phone. Yeah, I think that's a lot better. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes. So these are different challenges we have in the community. We have drought, hurricane, lack of government support, as we mentioned before. These are the main problems that people are dealing with every year. It's not only 1 year, but we have this problem every year. Then the biggest problem we have in Fondwa is the non-Haitian varieties, which is the reason why we have the Haitian Heirloom Seed Bank. So, born and raised in Fondwa, I grew up with my grandfather, and we know the challenges already. We know like the drought, the lack of rain, and we have like flooding sometimes. But one of the biggest problem remains like the foreign varieties. So what happened? During the year of 1980s, so the farmers, they used to have good seeds, to plant the seeds that are adapt to the ecosystem. But after several natural disasters, NGOs have introduced new varieties of seeds in the country. So those seeds, they can do well in one place. However, in the Haitian ecosystem, those seeds, they are not bred to resist like all the challenges we've been having. Like in our community, the heirloom seed we used to have, they are resistant to drought and all the problems. But with the new variety of seeds that the NGOs brought into our country, so those seeds, they cannot, survive. So the farmers, what happened? The farmers, they give away the heirloom seed they had, and then they adopt those seeds. Now, as a problem, when they ate up the new seeds, what happened? They cannot grow well as the heirloom seeds used to. So now the farmers become very low in crop production. They don't have any seeds, to plant during the year. And that's the reason why we come with the Haitian Heirloom Seed Bank idea. This idea was possible thanks, first of all, to Professor Christina Z, because she was the one, when I heard about this project, it was a grant, actually, a university in Italy, and associated with a company called Guerrilla. Those two entities put together, a contest for international students to participate. Now, when I have the idea, I saw that, and I invited Professor Christina, and she was very instrumental to help me putting together, papers to submit and also preparing presentation. And then I went to Italy, and I won the contest. With that contest, and I came home with the money, and then I put up together this initiative, which is the Haitian Heirloom Seed Bank. You can see a short picture on the wall. So the main purpose of that project was to reintroduce heirloom seed in our community, as the farmers lost all the seeds they have, and also to preserve and multiply the little heirloom seed we have, and also to train the farmers to teach them how to preserve the seeds so we can multiply more to provide to more people. Our challenges. So when we first started with the seed project, we started very good, but over the years, after 1 or 2 years, we have some challenges. Some of the challenges are like we have hurricane, which came and destroyed all the crops that the farmers plant, and they didn't have anything to start again. We also have drought on another side, and also they have financial problem because they couldn't afford to buy seeds, which was the main reason why we have the seed bank. And then at a certain point, we almost stopped the project, but other people who knew about the project, they came and give us hand, and they give them some donation. And when with that, we started again with the project. We keep it going. Then to bring the heirloom seed in the community, because in our community we don't have the heirloom seed, we had the GMO seed, the new genetic seeds. So to be able to introduce those seeds in the community, we have to go to places where they don't have the GMO seeds. So to do that, we have to put people in the community together. We use horses and mules to bring those seeds into our community. And we can work for 3 to 4 hours before we can get those seeds. And from the area where we get those seeds, these areas are very particular. They are not close to the main road where NGOs can go to give them the seed. And then this is where we bought those seeds and then bring it back to our community. Distribution. So you can see a picture. I don't know if you can see me, but we do the distribution by location. You can see me right here. This is me with some of the farmers. So I give them some seed because we have 6 areas that we cover so far. Fondwa has 9 sub-communities, but we do cover 6 of them. This was one of them where we were giving seed to the people. And these are some of the farmers. And how do the farmers save the seed after they receive them? You know, in Haiti, we have very low technology, so we don't really have a proper place, you know, good equipment to save the seeds. But after we distribute the seed, we do have a way, you know, to keep the seeds. So the way we do that, we use like very simple method, like natural, where we teach the farmers, because old people, like elderlies, that's the way they used to do that. We give the seeds like very good sun, and then we have a tree leaves that we use that called acacia, which is very, it has like, I would say it has a chemical that protect the seeds from, you know, being eaten by mite or other species. And then we use that, and then we use a cloth bag, we store the seeds, and then we can keep those seeds for at least 1 year and nothing will happen to them. That's the way we keep the seed in the area. Seed saving, the importance for people in Fondwa. For farmers in Fondwa, we save seeds for many reasons, but those are some of the reasons. We save seed, we believe in seed saving because it preserves the native species we get. And then we believe in seed saving because it helps us multiply seeds. Also, seed saving is a bank account, I would say, for the farmers, because they can sell the seed to, you know, to fulfill other needs. They also use seed saving. This is a great way to keep the seeds so they can plant for the next year. And then this is one of the picture of one of the farmers in the community. You can see this is the black beans, and then this is the whole field for a farm, and then that's the house of the farmers. And this is me in the area, so I'm showing you where I live. And that's it. Thank you so much. So this is a little short presentation. So if you get a question, I am open for questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Junior.
Thank you.
Amazing. So if you have any questions for Junior, please feel free to drop them in the chat at any time. And we will have a question and answer portion towards the end of the workshop. So now I'm going to introduce our second panelist, who is Lisa Bloodnick. So Lisa Bloodnick is of Bloodnick Family Farms and is a well-known seed steward who has been growing rare seeds from the Experimental Farm Network and maintains a collection featuring approximately 1,000 bean varieties and other rare crops. Bloodnick Family Farm is a diverse horse-powered family farm serving our local community, sustainably raised produce since 1992, and they have operated a popular CSA for over 25 years. So in addition to raising produce, herbs, and flowers, the operation also raises a small flock of heritage breed sheep and makes maple syrup. So Lisa, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, thank you very much for having me. I've been a market gardener for 29 years now. Locally, we do the Vestal Farmers Market. I do a community supported agriculture program, CSA, we call it just now pretty much farm share program, which we've done for about, I guess, this will be our 27th year. So along the way, so we grow pretty much everything. And along the way, people used to ask me, do you save seeds? And I always was like, no, you know, it's a whole nother process besides market gardening. It needs, you know, kind of its own space and let things mature to their full life cycle and things like that. But, you know, we always saved our own garlic and then got into some dry beans and, you know, just snowballed from there. And about maybe 6 or 7 years ago now, I got involved in a project to grow, because I had a lot of growing experience, and we have 5 acres that's irrigated and fenced in with an 8-foot fence. So we have a pretty secure area. And somebody asked me to get involved in growing out some rare seeds for a seed bank that needed, you know, some, you know, basically multiplication. And so I got involved in a much bigger way in seed saving. And, you know, at first I was interested in, you know, the primary driver was biodiversity and a lot of different strains, what with the yeah, and political, as seed companies get bought up, you know, all the small seed companies get bought up by the bigger ones. A lot of varieties get dropped and are at risk for disappearing. But also, you know, I started exploring and just becoming like dazzled by the diverse array of things that aren't commercially available, that people and families, you know, held as just their family bean or a corn. I don't do a lot of squash because I do so much for market that I can't do isolation. I don't have time or space. But you know, so the political part of it, just you know, GMOs, things like that. And then, you know, I really started to take off with the social and cultural aspect, with making friends literally from all over the world. And that is one of the good things about the internet, which can be a two-edged sword, but making friends from all over the world. There's these elaborate seed swaps, and you know, just starting to accumulate all the stories, and you know, the seed stories and the cultural heritage. Seed saving and seed sharing became a way to celebrate cultures, and you know, exploring food sovereignty and seed sovereignty. And you know, so it became more and more elaborate as the years have gone by. I currently have a massive seed collection. Like, I'm a one-person walking seed bank. I probably have over 1,000 beans that I steward alone. I do a few corns each year, but the thing that I really like is just making all the friends along the way. And I did a few, I have some show and tell things. I didn't do a presentation, but I started working with the Experimental Farm Network project, and doing a few things, talking about just the cultural, like learning about other cultures and stuff. This is a sorghum. It's called coral, and it's from a village called Malakal in South Sudan. And this Experimental Farm Network project, you can search them, and they specialize in crops, mostly food crops that are threatened by human activities, whether it be war or environmental stuff, climate change especially. Anyway, this came from a village called Malakal. It's indigenous to that village. Sorghum in this country is mostly used for animal feed, bit for molasses, but in other cultures, it's a staple crop. This is an interesting sorghum because it's a triple use sorghum, and you can use the stalks. It grows like corn basically, and this variety is about 12 feet tall when it's growing. It looks like a corn plant except for the seed head on top instead of the ears of corn. And they can use the stalks. They can shred them up for and extract the sap, and press out the sap and use it for a sweetener, or they use the immature seed heads as a green vegetable crop, or you can use the mature seed heads as a grain crop, and they can toast it and grind it for flour, or they can do, this is a popping sorghum as well, so you can make like a nutty pop, like kind of a rough popcorn kind of, kind of pops like a popcorn. So in the intent of growing this, Nate got seeds. We have seed banks, national seed banks. The GRIN is one of the repositories. They maintain a network of seed banks. And Nate Kleiman, who's the founder of EFN, the Experimental Farm Network, requested seed. They had a small sample, and then he has sent it out to farmers like me, and we've been multiplying it. And the initial goal is to, the village was destroyed in Civil War, and they lost all their seed stock. And so the hope is that once we get a good supply and they resettle the village, that we can send it back to them. Things like that. Other stories, they all have stories, which is what I love about seed saving. This is a corn, and it's a Haudenosaunee corn. I made a really good friend, Stephen McCumber, who's one of the Haudenosaunee Seed Keepers, which is the Iroquois nation, one of the Iroquois nations. And he's a Mohawk elder, and I became friends with him. I also got this corn from Nate Kleinman, and it's called Katie Wheeler's corn and Flint corn. And so I started growing that out, and I put pictures on my Facebook page, and Stephen McCumber saw them. He had lost that corn several decades ago, and he was the one who had originally gathered it out of Katie Wheeler's garden. So I was able to return it to him and make a friend in the process. I've been developing my own blue bean called Sacre Blue, which I don't have a fresh example of because I had a crop failure this year with the frosts. But that's the other neat thing about saving seeds is you can select for what performs the best in your own garden. There's a lot of reasons to save seed. And to me, each seed is like a little mini capsule of human history. You know, somebody along the way. I'm just one person in thousands of years of selecting. And some people might select for productivity, some for a certain flavor or a use in like a traditional dish, or color, or there's a lot of, every time you save seeds, you're putting a selective pressure, and you can create your own neat things too. You can keep something pure for preservation purposes, or you can also run with it and create your own things. I work with another guy collection. This is Robert Lovitz. This is one of his beans. I can't really see it in the picture, but I work with a Lovitz bean collection. Robert Lovitz died in Minnesota a couple decades ago, and he was a bean breeder, and he bred for color and flash. He has very colorful beans, but when he died, nobody really appreciated the work he'd been doing, and they basically pulled up a dumpster to his cabin and threw everything out. But his brother had some things. All of the notes are gone though about the parentage and stuff. But there's about 100 and, I don't know, we're up to like 100 and going towards 120 name varieties that friends and I are trying to kind of reunite, find as many as we can spread around the country and reunite the Lovitz collection. And then things like, I just got these in the mail a couple days ago. This is a tomato seed stump of the world. And it's Remy's memorial from this woman, Marcia, on Facebook. And Remy Orlowski ran the sample seed shop, and she passed away this year of breast cancer. So a bunch of people are going to grow out her favorite tomato and save seeds and share them in memory, of Remy. And so trying to think. I just talked really fast along the way, but the main collection, I'm trying to downsize. I have like pictures. I don't know if you can see my table here. I have like stacks of, let's see where the camera is, beans. But this is, let's see here. Yeah, there we go. It's probably going to be backwards, isn't it? I'm currently working, actually, there we go, with the Chris Hubbard collection, which is, he is a Cherokee seed keeper down in Kentucky. And my main thing right now is working with his collection. So I'm downsizing a lot of my other seeds. And he has a collection of, I think, seeds from 354 of the federally recognized tribes that he's a third generation seed keeper. He is terminally ill, and the collection needs growing out for fresh seed purpose, preservation. And the goal is to rematriate them back to their tribes. So I'm currently on year 3 of helping him grow out a lot of his collection. So I think I've run out of my time. And as Junior said, I guess we'll get questions afterwards.
That's great. Thank you, Lisa. There's a lot of sad information in there, but also a lot of hopeful information, and like
it's hope. I mean, there's always this realization of how much we've already lost genetically, and but there's still hope. Like every time you meet somebody and start up a conversation and like, oh, my grandmother has a bean from, her grandmother brought from Italy in her pocket, or, Chris also has a lot from the slave trade. People would like weave seeds into their hair and bring them. You can, seed trading and seed sharing is part of human history, and it's really neat. So.
That is really interesting. I'm looking forward to, well, the rest of the panelists and the questions and answer session to learn more from everybody. But with that, I'm very excited to be able to introduce our next two panelists. Up next, we're going to have Anandi Premlall, and I'll give a brief introduction to her. With a global mindset and vision resting at the intersection of social justice, sustainability, wellness, and permaculture, Anandi Premlall is an international agroecological educator, writer, grower, and pharmacist with an F, who has mycelial roots thriving in the Caribbean, ancestral India, and USA. With seed banks in various locations around the world, Anandi shares and grows seeds to preserve culture and biodiversity by growing for the ecosystem.
All right, thank you so much, Nada, and thank you everyone for putting this together. I come from the Caribbean, so when I was hearing Junior talk about the plants and crops there, it got me really excited, especially cassava. That's one of the crops we really love, and our native peoples grow them for just about everything in Guyana. So, so part of why I've been doing what I've been doing in the agricultural world is to recreate the lushness, the biodiversity, the greenness that I experienced being born and growing up in the Caribbean, and then being raised in Queens, New York. I was able to really explore and learn more about seed saving and what it is to have ownership or have food sovereignty, and what it means, different terms that are out there right now, like food justice, food sovereignty, seed saving. Like, what does that have to do with the average person out there who just goes to, the grocery store and picks up whatever they need and doesn't think about what happens further in the life cycle? For me, it's a little challenging to talk solely on one topic in agriculture because I see them all as linked. I've had some of the most amazing seeds pop out of my compost pile. And so composting is another huge thing that I love. And it's also very much linked to soil and seed saving. So along with knowing how to grow good soil, I think it's also essential about knowing how to save good viable seeds, how to identify, look for seeds, when to know when a plant is ready. And because I've made those mistakes before, oh my goodness. I've made every possible mistake in taking care of worms, harvesting seeds, trying to grow plants, complete admitted plant murder at times, but and seed killer sometimes. But I do try, do my best and work with nature. And the wonderful thing about nature is that nature is very forgiving. And so with the work that I've been doing in Queens, we were working on creating an anti-cancer garden. So I was looking up about 50 different plants, trees, wildflowers, everything that has anti-cancer properties, and just putting together a garden based on that. So then I started putting together just different plant relationships, how plants relate to our health, how seeds relate to our health, how they're grown. Because we did, we can, go on and talk for hours about GMOs and biodiversity and why that's important. But seeds generally in just their very being, they hold the past, the present, and the future. And this one tiny, most seeds are very small, except a few that are quite large, but they hold all that information and all that possibility. So especially in these times, whether it's in the middle of a pandemic or in the middle of, the winter, thinking about seeds and growing seeds and what I want to eat is a really exciting thing to do, during these kind of dreary cold times, or when there seems to be, you know, kind of a little hope. But seeing these little seeds grow into seedlings is one of the most magical things that I experience, and it happens to every single little seed that I do grow. So one of the things I usually ask my students, like, have you ever watched a seed grow, you know, into a seedling? What does that mean? What kind of foods do you enjoy eating? You know, what's part of your culture too? Like, where a lot of different places where I visited, I'm like, oh, I can't buy and I can't find the foods that are relevant to my culture, you know, whether it's Indo-Caribbean or ancestral India. I go into certain neighborhoods and certain communities, certain states across the US, and I couldn't find either the spices, herbs, plants that I need. So I started looking deeper and deeper into, you know, seed saving, culturally relevant seeds. Like, who are selling these seeds? Like, where can I actually find seeds that my people have grown? If I've been disconnected, you know, or displaced multiple times, how do we find that? And I remember my mom coming across seeds to one of her favorite peas. We call it same fali, and watching her grow this in the garden we built for her in our backyard in Queens was just so beautiful. Having the seeds, you know, grow up on their vines, harvesting them with her, cooking that meal with her, because as my Shiro, Dr. Vandana Shiva says, it's not just important to know how to grow the food or know the seeds, but also important to know how to cook them, right? And how to prepare them, and how do you nourish yourself with these seeds too? Because these seeds are here to serve us, and we're also here to serve the seeds as keepers of their knowledge and nutrition. And so I had the honor and privilege of living and working and studying for 3 months at Navdanya Biodiversity Farm in Dehradun, India, in the foothills of the Himalayas with Dr. Vandana Shiva. And there I was able to learn so much about how they're saving over 700 varieties of rice in a very small space. So they know exactly how to isolate the crops. You're planting particular crops in X amount of like square feet, so they don't cross-pollinate with a similar crop. You know, it was just amazing, the mathematics looking at it. I said, how could you possibly grow this many, you know, varieties without having them cross-pollinate or, you know, become affected by the plant that's next to it? And so I learned an amazing amount of like how they grew their crops, and also about polycrops, multi-planting, like maybe 10, 12 crops in like one space. So knowing the seeds, knowing what seeds work well together, because the relationships that seeds and plants have with one another, that's one relationship. Then you have the relationship with the microorganisms, the myceliums. There's a lot that goes into growing seeds, into growing food, and it's been, you know, really exciting process. So a couple of years ago, I was in one of the quilombos, which is one of the areas that Afro-Brazilians created when they established their freedom. And so I went there to teach part of a permaculture course. Having arrived there, they completely were so self-sufficient. So I was like, well, I really don't have that much to teach you guys. You can actually teach me a lot. And I just loved, they had fat, healthy babies. They were riding horses. But the one thing that they were was food insecure. And so I actually helped them we shared stories. We talked about seeds as I brought out different seeds from my travels in India. So travels in India, the Caribbean. They worked in the same type of region with the same kind of red soil. And so I was able to share seeds with them and help them start their own seed bank, which is really exciting with the students in the village, the different teachers, and just share, knowing, you know, just listening to their stories, what they named those plants. Because you could have, of course, you have the scientific names of the plants, but when you hear the cute little names and the different names in various cultures and places, and the different foods that they make, and I think these are so important. If we're not preserving all of these right now, and they're going to disappear, and we're going to lose not just the seeds, but the beautiful culture and the beautiful food. I mean, that's one reason why we grow food, right? That's why I do, to eat like really yummy food. And just showing students how, just that little bit of magic, just how to, how to collect seeds. One of the things that I highly encourage is guerrilla seed saving, especially for native plants and flowers. So that means you're going around and picking up seeds without permission, but asking for forgiveness later, should anyone inquire about why you're growing plants. But usually no one has a problem with that. I've been approached by officials, and I'm like, hey, I'm planting seeds. It's like, all right, carry on. So yeah, guerrilla seed saving can be a really amazing way, especially if you're you don't have the space or finances to collect seeds. If you happen to be walking by, plants that are going to seed, and then that it takes learning what that looks like, what the seed looks like in its original state, what it looks like when it's growing, also what it looks like when it's fruiting, when it's ready to be picked. Because if you do pick a seed before its time, there are different. I'm sorry. Yeah, so there are different times in which the plant is valuable. So you'll have the time when you're saving it for the fruit, and then if you leave it a little longer, you'll be able to save it for seeds. And with each type of plant, there are different ways in which you save those seeds. So for a pepper plant, you're going to save them like pretty easily. For tomatoes, it's a little more, there's a little more of a process involved, but it's not impossible. Squash, just about, anything. I even, try to regrow whatever I can. So it doesn't take any kind of seeds, but for me to restart that. So that's another other topic we can talk about. But having the seeds and the access to seeds is also has also become a privilege to a lot of communities and a lot of spaces around the world. So when I show up somewhere and I have seeds, or talk about having a seed bank, and I'm completely willing to share the seeds that I do have, and also swap seeds, so we can further collaborate, create biodiversity. Let's say I lose my crops, I'm the only one who has this particular special seed, and I have this one crop and it dies, or this tree dies. And if I haven't shared it with my community or my friends or family, I won't be able to get access to that plant or that crop anymore, right? But if I do share these seeds with my family, with friends, with whomever, if that crop fails or that tree dies, I can then actually go back to this person who I've then built a relationship with and ask for those seeds, or ask for that plant, or ask for fruit from that tree, and then to start to regrow that again. So there's so many benefits to building community, to have community around seed saving. Also talking about, the types of foods that people do want to eat within a community. Often I've found with a lot of CSAs, or that for myself and others, there just wasn't enough of the foods that came from my culture. I'd have to just go, I'd have to go separately and shop, or go to specialty markets and shop for a particular type of eggplant, or a particular type of pepper that I grew up using. And in certain areas, it really just pains me to have to like buy greens and things like that until I'm fully set up with my new gardens where I moved. But one of the things I start to look at in new places as what's growing here, what kind of, learning the growing season, that will affect when you can identify and harvest seeds and when they go to seed. And also super important to be able to keep your seeds and preserve them in a space that's just really nice and cool. One of the things that I've done, especially with transporting or traveling with seeds and storing them, is keeping them in little coin envelopes, and then labeling them and putting those in glass mason jars as a super super backup, keeps them away from rodents, especially you know, wherever you are. I know I had to deal with that a lot in particular areas I was traveling in. And then it also keeps everything just so much more organized. And I'm really excited too to see that there are farms out there who are starting to grow more culturally relevant foods and foods that relate to, you know, to everyone, just more than, you know, basic like iceberg lettuces or romaine lettuces, having, you know, diversity, having choice in whatever, you know, we want to eat. Like why don't we offer that more, you know? And so it leaves it up to us to be able to preserve those seeds, sometimes ourselves, and then, you know, continuously grow them out. And sometimes it's not just seeds. Physical seeds are one way, but it's also, there's also different, some other different methods too, in terms of propagation and how to continue the growth and future generations of particular crops. So
That's great, Anandi. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
It's really good information.
Thank you.
I think we're about ready to introduce our next panelist. Do you have any last minute things you want to say before we move on? And there'll be time for questions and answers later too.
Oh, for me? Or
yeah, for you, like, because I didn't want to, like, I wasn't sure if I was cutting you off or if you were
yeah, I mean, I was looking timing wise, and I was like, okay, let me pause before, but yeah, I'm totally open to questions. There's so many exciting things to talk about in the world of seed and plants and agriculture. So I do also have a resource that I'm putting together and will send that you can email to participants later with some readings, pretty much a reading list.
That'd be great. Yeah, we'll make sure to share that. All right, well, then we'll move on to our last panelist, and then we'll have time for questions and answers. So I'm very happy to introduce Valerie Imbruce, who is an economic botanist who is interested in how community food systems are influenced by processes like immigration, gentrification, and global trade. She has visited community seed banks in Ecuador and Peru and saves and replants seeds with her children. Thanks, Valerie.
Thanks, Nita, and thank you everyone, especially to Vines and Binghamton University Libraries for putting this together. And it's really nice to meet and hear from panelists that I know and I don't know. I'm going to share my screen, so hang on. Okay, let me get my PowerPoint set up. Okay, can everyone see that all right? I just want to get out of full screen myself. Oh, wait, hang on. I realize that my notes for my presentation are in a different spot, so I have to move this over. Sorry about that. Okay. All right. So, so thank you. So
before you, sorry, Valerie, before you get started, could you maybe put it in the slideshow mode? Just because it is kind of small.
It is in slideshow mode for me. Wait, hang on. Wait, let me try one other thing.
That's awesome. Great. Thank you.
We're good now? Awesome.
Yes, that's great.
Okay. All right. So as I was reflecting on, what I wanted to say here, I've sort of woven together a few different strains of thoughts that I have around seeds. And some of that relates to the research that I've done or projects that I've been involved in. And some of that is just, stories that I've picked up along the way from media and from art. And so, seeds, as everyone has mentioned in this panel, are these kind of embodiments of the past and the present and the future. And so I think of them as givers of life. I mean, very, symbolically as well as materially, right? This is the base of our of our food source, as well as they're so important culturally and ecologically. So I stole that title for the presentation from this sculpture that's right here in our community. I mean, we don't have to go back. We don't have to look too far to unearth stories about creation. that involve the importance of seeds as fundamental to our origin stories. And so this sculpture is in the University Downtown Center in Binghamton. And it was made in 2010, commissioned for this building to commemorate the excavations that were done before the building went up. And so it represents the people of the Longhouse, the Haudenosaunee, and their origin story about the Sky Woman, right? And here she's the Sky Woman. These are some students. I take my students in my Intro to Environmental Studies course to see this. And in the front, you see the Sky Woman depicted with a child. In the back is corn, beans, and squash, the three sisters. And as the story goes, Sky Woman fell from the sky on the back of the Turtle Island with a fistful of soil in which these three seeds started Earth and gave rise to the Haudenosaunee people. And similarly, when you look at Native Americans of South America, they have similar kinds of creation stories and figures that are worshipped and ritualized. And this is Pachamama. And I was reminded of Pachamama just through a new animation called Pachamama that's available on Netflix. And it's an animation that was done as a labor of love over 14 years and was finally picked up and produced and picked up on Netflix. Netflix now is our disseminator of global culture, right? And here's this animation about Pachamama. This is an image I picked off the internet by Jazzy Watson on this interesting website. But in her hair, I think her braids are very reminiscent of seeds. I was interested to hear one of our panelists speak about African American slaves, hiding seeds in their hair is reminded of this picture. But Pachamama is the Earth Mother, and pre-Incan villages in the Andes would have a site in their village where there would be some kind of hole in the earth where they would offer seeds and food and other things as a means to feed the Earth Mother, so in turn that she could nourish them. And this story was really well depicted through dramatic happenings in the movie, which I don't want to give away. It's really fantastic on Netflix, Pachamama. So thinking about these two origin stories, connects to some of my personal experiences. I was really fortunate to have this opportunity. In 2014, I was asked to evaluate a project that was ongoing in Ecuador and also had field sites in Uganda, Morocco, and China. And the project was being done by Bioversity International, which is a research institution. It's headquartered in Rome, Italy, part of this UN group, the Consultative Group on International Agricultural Research, which was set up in the post-World War II, let's kind of create new global order post-World War II. And these institutions, there are many different CGIAR institutions, but Bioversity is particularly focused on promoting agricultural development through in situ conservation of germplasm. And what that is really a complementary approach to what many of the other panelists are talking about. Seed banks as being what could be termed the ex situ conservation, taking those seeds, that germplasm, and storing them in a place for future use. And Bioversity does these projects that's about in situ conservation, so finding ways to keep seeds viable and growing economically, culturally, and ecologically. And so this project, this is actually in Cotacachi in the northern Andes in Ecuador, and they have this ongoing seed festival. It's called Muyo Raime, and it's 14 years running now. And the point is to celebrate the seed and the diversity of crops that are grown in this region and throughout Ecuador. And now there's international components, and you can see this beautiful offering that's set up here. Here you have, a vendor as part of the seed festival. You have farmers who come to show the seeds that they've been growing, and they sell and trade and educate. And so this festival is meant to be a marketplace, you know, as well as a festival to celebrate and have music and food. And this particular farmer was a part of the project. She grew over 100 varieties of corn. And one of the reasons why this project was ongoing in Cotacachi is that because they realized, biodiversity scientists realized that there was a lot of seed diversity, but it was mostly, it was distributed among farms. And so it was uncommon that seed populations were grown on multiple farms. So the, you know, seed flow between farms wasn't happening. It was common for people to save seeds. They saved it mostly because of it's their family custom, for food, for supplemental income, for animal sustenance in smaller cases, and for you know, ecological reasons for different traits. So in this part of the project was to, in order to foster more kind of inter-farm seed flows, that set up a community seed bank. The same, you know, same thing, same kind of intervention many of you were talking about. And so this, you know, was the table at the seed festival to show off the project and to kind of promote the seed bank. And then the seed bank is in a very, you know, it's set up with very much like this, with jars of seeds that people can go and drop off and take out, and they have different protocols for that. But it's also meant for education. So the project was running, you know, trips for school children to come to the seed bank and talk about the foods that they eat and how seeds are part of their family life and their culture as well. So then I went down on the same trip as part of the same project to the coast of Ecuador. This is in La Mana. And similarly, a similar idea of promoting in situ conservation of banana and plantains in these coastal communities, where people have been growing many different varieties of bananas and plantains, and mostly harboring those varieties, those non-commercial varieties, because it's their household custom. It's because they prefer to eat it. They love making these different kinds of foods, and there's different bananas and different plantains that are appropriate for different dishes. You know, you could see here, this is, I mean, so like, I think some of you, I mean, my personal motivation to be interested in agrobiodiversity is through the lens of food. So, so here we have, you know, and I've never had plantain and banana prepared in so many different ways. They grind it and make it into drinks, and make it into flours, into patties, into savory dishes, into sweet dishes, into cakes. And so in this project, what they were trying to do to promote the saving of this germplasm as to, and here you could see some of the cultural importance. These are banana queens with outfits that are made, you know, out of banana fibers and dried bananas. A lot of pride around bananas and plantains in these communities. And they're trying to, part of the project is set up a commercial processing facility to make flours. So they're hoping to promote the commercialization of more underutilized types of bananas and plantains, so that farmers can keep growing them and have that economic viability while they're continuing their cultural practices. So here you can see a mixed banana agro-ecosystem. You have some coffee and some coconuts and a couple of different kinds of bananas. Okay, and now I'm going to take you just briefly to another project that I've been working on, and this is more close to my personal, you know, research that I've been doing since the 2000s, since my dissertation. I've been working in New York City's Chinatown, Manhattan's Chinatown, just because it, you know, the array of plant life that you see for sale on the street was so curious to me. And, you know, since the early 2000s, you know, I've charted kind of the networks of production and exchange for Manhattan's Chinatown, and lately have been working with this organization called City as Living Laboratory to raise awareness about Chinatown's food system. There are new pressures of gentrification that are changing the face of business and street life in Chinatown. I've seen a reduction in the number of street markets there. And so we put up this story map. You can go and take a look. Been working with a designer who does some visioning about urban planning and is working on a really nice kind of hand-drawn graphic to bring to life the street life and food sales in Chinatown. And one of the surprising stories, particularly related to seed saving within this network, and this is, a global network of trade, which in many cases, as I started looking at this work and globalization of agriculture is going into looking for, counter narratives against the ag industrial complex. And, I found cases of that for Chinatown's food system, which, relatively niche, types of fruits and vegetables sold for specific, markets like New York's Chinatown. And one of the production sites that I did my research in was in Honduras. So this is in central Honduras, very, very hilly, almost like the pictures we saw from Haiti, although not quite as steep. But similar, very hilly interior of the country. And there's one kind of flat valley that's been the premier site for vegetable agro exports for the past few decades. And, mostly that was in tomato. And many of the farmers had a crash because of whitefly infestation in tomatoes. The USDA put a detention on importation of these crops. And so Chinese vegetables became a new agro export for farmers through private-public partnerships. And here you see work being done to grow and save seeds for chives, which are a common vegetable sold. And so I was stunned to see this Taiwanese mission that as part of their agricultural development, international development arm had sort of set up and took it upon themselves to help Honduran farmers by growing out seeds of different varieties so they can become adapted to the Comayagua Valley, and they were selling them back to farmers at cost. And so really important, piece of this puzzle. Likewise, this was a Chinese eggplant. So here you could kind of get the sense of the setting. Chinese eggplant being grown, being cultivated by oxen, and the eggplant is grafted is a variety of the long purple Chinese eggplant that's grafted onto a rootstock from a native solanum species within the Comayagua Valley that has nematode resistant roots. And so you have this variety of eggplant that's simultaneously sort of commercializable, but that's adapted to local conditions. Okay, and looks like my last picture is not rendering. That's a bummer. This was one of my favorite pictures from my work. I wonder if I go out of, hang on. No, it just disappeared somehow in that strange transition, but I'll just say, and I'll stop sharing. I'll just say that, another part of that work that I've done was in South Florida, which is the only tropical part of the contiguous United States. And so there are communities of Southeast Asian farmers that are growing very specific crops, included wild collected seeds, that were brought over in some cases illegally. I'm sure, seeds, people moving around with seeds is an age-old story. And so I saw some really interesting kind of backyard gardens with seeds that people have been collecting and saving and growing for specialty markets up and down the East Coast. Thank you. I'm excited to take questions and continue to the discussion part of this.
Thank you so much for sharing all of your wisdom with us. We have a lot of questions, both in the chat box and from Facebook. Just going to take a minute and just make sure I get everybody who is presenting with us in the spotlight. We got Anandi and then Lisa. There you go. So we have some general kind of questions prepared, but we also have great questions from the audience. So I'll just touch on a few. And If you feel moved to speak, please do so. And I suggest everybody, the presenters, unmute themselves for this portion if you can. So one question that we had is, what is the connection between seed saving and nutrition? Is there anybody who would like to speak a little bit about this?
Yeah, I can say something about it. In our culture, like in Haiti, seed saving holds a very good importance because the farmers they save the seeds for different purposes. They save it to plant and they save it to sell to the market to make some money, but also they save it to prepare certain food. Like for the little babies in our community, for example, black beans. The farmers they use the black beans, they prepare a sauce with it. They kind of ground the black beans and they put like squash and other nutrients in it, other vegetables. And then this is a good source of protein for the little kids. And they do that a lot for like kids from probably 8 to 2 years, 8 months to 2 years. So this is a very good source of protein for people in our community for little babies.
And also, I'll chip in, even things like tomatoes, I don't particularly care for them, but the high anthocyanin, like the blue tomatoes are super popular with some people, but you can, if you're saving your own seeds, you can, look at the crop. You can be selecting, say like winter squashes with like the deepest orange color, so higher carotene levels, things like that. You can start, putting your own selective pressure on to, get added nutrition.
Excellent. And I do know that Dr. Vandana Shiva, who Anandi worked with, she did a lot of research on polycultures and increasing nutrition per hectare. Anandi, do you want to add anything about that?
Yes, actually, we did talk a lot about growing an acre of nutrition. And it's interesting that when I do share about that on social media, about how you can grow incredibly nutrient-rich food on 1 acre to feed about a family of 4, I get so many protests and saying, this is not true, this is a storybook idea, that you can't possibly do that. Only big farms, they can feed everyone. And so seeing a living example, with like using the horses, no big equipment with spyware, and being able to to use every bit of land in a really, creative way, and also grow foods. You are, with the nutrition, not just looking at growing just like random crops, you're looking at how everything works together. So like in Ayurvedic or Indian food, you're going to have your grains, which will, can include a rice. It can include, types of sorghum, or it can include different ways. You could use them, to make the bread. You can have them specifically as the grain. And a lot of the crops can actually be grown together. So you're actually growing an entire like plate of food on the farm. So it was really, really super exciting to see that and see the possibility of growing multiple crops together. They have relationships that prevent, so if like, for example, you're growing cilantro, it's going to attract parasitic wasps that kill off other, pests that, gardeners and farmers don't like. But generally in nature, there are no pests because there are roles and responsibilities for, for every insect, for every plant, even the ones that we don't particularly like or are fond of. So, and that goes along the same with, there's a similar thought process with like whether it's a native plant or it's an exotic plant. So I hope that answers some of the question, but that can go pretty deep in terms of nutrition, how you track that nutrition, whether you're using, but being able to grow polycrops and multiple crops in one area definitely brings up, increases biodiversity, increases crop tolerance, increases defensiveness against particular pests and diseases, and generally makes healthier crops. Once you start doing that together, then you don't actually have to, you can rotate, but not, you don't necessarily have to rotate your crops in a huge scale because you are growing such a diversity of crops in one area. So it's really wonderful to see these different methods, and also being able to share them out and show that, yes, in small spaces where most most food is grown on acre and 1 acre plots of land around the world by women, particularly women of color, and then generally all women, but that's sometimes not the face, or mostly not the face that you see of farming and of growing and of seed saving, especially when it comes to nutrition. So yeah, there's a direct, super direct correlation. How, and then also it goes into like how early and when you're picking your crop too. That helps to determine how nutritious the crop is, because if you're having to pick that crop much earlier in the season, it's not going to have its peak ripeness and all the nutrients that it needs, versus like growing something and eating something that's grown locally too. So when you're growing something locally, you're eating more locally. Chances are it will be more nutritious for you, because it will be grown and picked at a state that has its peak nutrition.
I'm glad you brought that up. Simply because the time that you might harvest something for storing as seed might be different from the time that you might be harvesting for fresh consumption. And I love the topic you brought up about farmers. I bet a lot of people, when they imagine a farmer, they might not picture a woman, but so many smallholder farmers are women. I'm wondering if anybody would like to speak a little bit about how seed saving impacts smallholder farmers and or women. And if anybody did not get a chance to share any thoughts on nutrition, I'd also welcome that.
Yeah, I'll jump in. I mean, first on nutrition, I just wanted to echo, I think, something that Lisa said, just about, the reason why I think a good adage for nutrition related to plant life is, diversity of colors is going to be better for your diet. And that's because plants have all of these natural pigments, anthocyanins, carotenoids that have different kind of chemoprotective effects that they utilize in nature that is also beneficial for people. And I think the second part of that sort of relates to the question of seed saving and gender, which, in the communities that I've seen, the gendered roles in terms of farming that I've seen in the case in Peru and in Ecuador that I showed you, and in Honduras, the women were doing the marketing and the food preparation. The men were doing the kind of field labor. And so, in the academic literature, the link between gender in terms of females and seed saving is very strong. And I saw that, you saw in the seed festival that I showed you, all the people who were there showing and displaying their seeds and there to trade their seeds were all women, right? That was very much women's work, and it was the women too at that festival who were saying and making part of the rhetoric of that festival about health and about preservation of traditional foods. So, whereas in part of a modernity in the globalization of processed foods, children might want to have white rice and noodles for lunch or dinner, and that's all good, but there is a very concerted resistance to that coming from women at this festival, that wanting their children to eat quinoa and to eat amaranth and to eat the different kinds of corns and drinks associated with them. And so that was very much a part of retaining that culinary heritage and recognizing the health benefits of these traditional seeds versus the modern food products that are now available.
Thank you so much. I want to do a time check. We've got about 10 more minutes left. If people are willing to stay longer, I think that's great. And if not, I understand if people need to hop off. We have some great questions about climate change and genetically modified seeds, but I also want to honor the questions that come from our audience members. So we had a question from Julie Forgione for Junior. She wanted to know, for the Haitian Heirloom Seed Bank, do you plan to expand seed saving to other market crops? Are you keeping it just with the crops you're doing now, or where would you go next?
Yeah, as of now, we just try to multiply the seeds we have because we started with very small number of amount of seeds, and then every season, when we harvest the seed, we're trying to make sure that we keep a certain amount of it so we populate it more for the next year, so more farmers can get it. We originally started with 36 farmers. Right now we have 246 farmers, like we're serving in those 6 areas. And then every year we're trying to increase the number. When we reach our goal, like all the 9 areas have sufficient seeds, then we can start selling it to the market. But as of now, we just keep it between the farmers.
Excellent. The next question I think could go to Valerie, although I think Lisa might have some insight into this too. This is a question from Facebook. The question is, how did she, and I think she means the Ecuadorian woman with seed saving, how did she manage to maintain 100 distinct varieties of corn with the effect of wind cross-pollination? Lots of highly separated plots or something trickier?
Oh, that's yeah, Lisa, you should take that because I can't speak from details of that woman's account. So go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know about that woman in particular, but I do know a lot of people who do maintain fairly large corn plots and varieties. And even I've done it myself because there is a cross-pollination issue with the wind. But you can buy, or in this case make, I'm sure they're not buying them, but little bags. Yeah, and I've even used like brown paper lunch bags, and you can cover the tassel spike and you cover the ears. So when corn is pollinating, a lot of people don't realize this, that when you are husking an ear of corn, you know, all the silk, each piece of silk is actually a pollen tube. And a grain of pollen will come, you know, floating down through the air and land on a piece of silk, and it actually travels down that. And if you carefully peel an ear of corn when you're husking it, you'll see each kernel of corn has one specific piece of pollen or silk attached to it. And so anyway, what you need to do is just cover your ears with little bags, and then cover your tassels, and that way you can control. And what you do, corn pollen degrades at high temperatures, so we usually do it in the morning. You go through and you collect all the pollen that collects in the bags overnight, and mix it all up, you know, to get good genetic diversity of what you do want. And then you go down and uncover your ear, and then shake some pollen on it. And a lot of people will trim that silk, just keep it manageable, sprinkle some the desired pollen, then cover it back up to prevent any other pollen. And I mean, I do know, I mean, 100 varieties is a lot to keep track of, because, you know, she's like amazing because each type of corn is going to just be a little bit different in timing. You really got to stay on top of it and keep control of what's pollinating which days. And then, you know, once you pass that window and your ears are all pollinated, then you don't have to worry about it. You know, you can take the bags off or whatever. But yeah, so you can do it. It's a lot of work though.
And I suspect, because that's a good point, Lisa, about the individual kernels being pollinated separately. And so when you see, and if you remember in that picture that I showed you, some of those corn cobs have multiple colors and kind of variations of color on the same cob. So you're seeing kind of multiple types of cross-pollination that's happening. And so I suspect some of that is enabled, right? Some of the kind of less strict kind of maintenance of a particular variety in some cases, and that's what's leading to new varieties as well. So that cross-pollination.
Yeah.
Although one thing Anandi's probably familiar with, we're both in Rowan White's class, and you know, because I always would stress about keeping a variety pure, but when they do have a different kernel that does get pollinated at a different point and is like a different color, rather than they consider them visitors. They don't, a lot of the especially traditional cultures don't view it the same as like Westerner kind of rigid approach. A lot of times they'll view them as visitors and not this, like, you know, it's kind of, it's neat. It's a whole different concept and a different mind approach.
Thank you for sharing that information. I'm sure we're all ears. And if anybody wants to learn, I'm sorry, I can't help it. But see, people are leaving the workshop now that I started. So we are having a workshop on April 7th that Lisa is going to be leading with us that really goes into more of the hands-on practical work of seed saving. So if you want to get into the nitty-gritty of, well, how do I save this kind of crop versus this kind of crop, you can register at vinesgardens.org/events. These events are free and open to everyone. Another question from Maria Micah. She's asking, and this could really go to anybody on the panel, at what point is a seed defined as an heirloom seed, quote unquote? If one was to collect seeds from overseas, are there any seeds that would be discouraged from bringing into the US from other countries due to the potential of problems of being introduced in the US?
I would say something briefly about the heirloom seed, like from our side. For example, in Honduras, what people consider as heirloom seed is the seed that the ancestors have been planted for years. And those seeds are very, very native to the ecosystem, and then they are resistant to the type of disease. And people consider it as the best breed, like to plant in this specific area. Now, if you come with another seeds, it will not have the same yield that the heirloom seed that's specific to that area have. So that's basically why people in our area call like the seed we plant heirloom seed. But it might be different from another area. But in our area, the types of seeds we plant, that's what our parents, grandparents, they've been planting for years.
Yeah, I believe there's also an element of that heirloom seeds are open pollinated. They weren't hybridized like through the breeding process that gave rise to them. So you're likely that the next progenitors, the next generation from growing those seeds are likely to be similar rather than what you can get if you grow out the seeds of a hybrid seed. The next generation is not guaranteed to have the same traits.
Excellent. So I think, we're out of time, unfortunately, but there was a really great thing that I heard Anandi say. She said, seeds hold the past, the present, and the future. And so I'm wondering if you each could maybe do a last go round, simple statement, if you can. What do you think about the future of seed saving? What do you think about it in the context of climate change or genetic modification? Two topics that we did not have time to cover today. If anybody is willing to share their little seeds of knowledge with us and your insights, we'd appreciate it.
Well, I found it interesting. Seeds 2021 are kind of the toilet paper of 2020. A lot of people with the pandemic have started gardening and put a lot of pressure on seed companies and seed saving. Even me saving seeds, I do mostly like this indigenous collection I work with and stuff, and not really my market garden seeds. And boy, have I been kicking myself for not, there's been serious seed shortages. And where I also want to make the point, you said GMO. So anyway, I think learning to save seeds is important for, a secure food supply for everybody. Would also, just a little side note on GMO, we won't really get into it because we're out of time, but I do want to tell people that are new to the seed saving is that when you see like Ag Waste sign GMO free seeds here, you as a home gardener don't really need to worry. There aren't, the garden seeds aren't GMO. It's kind of just a marketing thing when you see that on like a Burpee packet or whatever. Corn seed is different, but mostly field corn, some sweet corn, Roundup Ready, BT, whatever. But you can't buy it accidentally. You will know. Yeah, it's usually farmers that have to sign contracts and stuff. If you're planting a field of GMO corn, you aren't going to randomly buy it off the shelf at your local store. So a lot of people stress about that. And since there's a lot of new gardeners out there this year and last year, then, you know, we'll tip.
Any other thoughts about climate change or seed saving in the context of GMOs before we close?
Well, I think of it on two levels. One is the personal, and I experienced what Lisa was talking about as I went to make my order for seeds, that seeds are just out of stock because gardening has increased in popularity during the pandemic. And I think that's a great thing. I see that as a really hopeful sign that people are kind of turning to different hobbies, or, you know, turning to provisioning their own food as a way to kind of cope through the pandemic, whether that's emotionally or actually, you know, economically. So I think that's really, that's hopeful, and there'll be a role for seed savers in that. I was like, wow, I wish I did more of my own seed saving just so I could have a packet of tomato seeds and not have to wait for a few weeks to order this one packet that I wanted. But and the other level is just societally. I don't, you know, thinking about that some organizations that take, you know, seed saving as part of their kind of duty for World Heritage. The Svalbard Seed Bank is one that I think of, that is a seed bank that was built in the Arctic Circle region archipelago of Svalbard, and this was purposely built. This is a seed vault that's built in a place that's supposed to be, you know, we'll see. I mean, it's highly technical to do this, but that's supposed to be away from any human or natural disaster. And there's certainly cases, you know, in history of seed collections, you know, being ruined in wars and other things, and for climate change disasters. And that's, you know, that is one kind of aspect of a forward-looking kind of protection of seeds as global patrimony.
And one thing I'd like to add is that I do hope, like in the future, especially with, you know, climate change is going to make our world definitely a lot warmer. And so we do need to become familiar with different bioregions and what, you know, different crops we might need to start looking at and introducing, and maybe even starting to grow earlier, ending our seasons later. So in that way, climate change is going to affect our crops in a particular way, but we can, you know, work with versus against nature. And it is my hope that, you know, sharing and swapping seeds would be like the next cool thing, you know, hey, you got some of that good corn, you know, or you get, you know, or the super nutritious beans or peas there, you know. And I've seen in the Caribbean and Trinidad, there's Agriman. So he personifies this superhero, you know, and different crops and things. And then another friend is growing and personifying these fruits and veggies. So I think the more fun that we can have with things, whether it's like seeds or plants, the more we'll remember them, you know. And I do think that, you know, seeds are, you know, they're so important. They are living beings. They're not inanimate objects, you know, they're not inanimate objects. They are living beings, and do need like the respect and the care, you know, in that way too. And so I see a lot more. I'm really inspired by both the elders sharing their knowledge in general around seeds and plants, and then also, this is in my class in young people and community, and then also the young people who are so excited, starting all these little seed libraries around. And so, yeah, so I do have a lot of hope, and I'm really excited to see, you know, what we're going to be able to grow, you know, generations from now.
Yeah, I want to say the last thing I want to say, I want to thanks to the panelists, and then I want to encourage you all and encourage other people to teach the young people how to save seed and to tell them the importance of seed saving, because I think seed saving, this is life. It's something happened, so we need to have seed, to start again. So seed saving is very important, and I think we should put ourselves together as a team, to embrace it, and then to let more people know about it. That's what I gotta say.
Well, folks, that was a really wonderful conclusion. I think you planted a lot of seeds in our minds and hearts today. Um, I think we're all very grateful to Binghamton University Libraries and to Vines for helping facilitate this presentation. Thank you to each of you, Junior, Anandi, Valerie, and Lisa, for sharing your wisdom with us. For participants who are still in the meeting, thank you for sitting with us. If your question did not get answered, I'm going to go ahead and email your question to the participants. And if they have time, maybe they can follow up offline. And of course, please sign up for any of our future programming. Thank you so much. Anybody want to add anything from BU Libraries?
No, just thank you so much for attending. We're so happy we were able to put this on. And if you have any questions about anything, please feel free to reach out at any time. But thank you. Thank you so much to the panelists as well.
I just want to ask the panelists to stay if they have a couple minutes after everybody leaves so we can discuss a couple things, and say thank you to everybody. Obviously, it was very interesting, and I wish we could go longer. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Well, thank you so much, everyone. And I think what we should do, actually, Nada, I think that we should maybe end this session. Otherwise, it'll wind up streaming on Facebook Live.
Oh, you can't stop that? Okay.
Oh, is there no way to stop it?
We can't kick people out unless we end the meeting, I think. So, but I can just reconnect us real quick.
Sure, yeah.